Hello everyone, welcome back. So now we're going to use an example to cover these concepts that I mentioned in my previous video. I'm going to create a class called person. So remember when you created functions, you used the keyword def for definition or define of a function actually. Here, the keyword that we're going to use is class. And class is going to be followed by the name of the class and colon. What happens after you do the colon in Python, as you have seen already with the if statement, for loops, defining functions, after the colon, the text will be indented. And every piece of text that is indented afterwards will be part of the definition or the creation of that class. So as you can see, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. Everything in this code is indented. I also used within this triple quotation marks some form of documentation just to let the user know what it is that I'm trying to do. So in the case of a person, the class person, I'm going to be storing information about a person. And I'm going to allow the user to access that information and to make some changes. It has attributes that you will input called name, age, city, and state. Name is a string. Age is an integer. City is a string. And state is a string. I'm not going to be using error handling techniques now because it's just for educational purposes. But if you were doing this in a commercial setting, you will also be adding error handling techniques, which we learn in CEIS 110. So the first thing we're going to do after we start with a keyword class, the name of the class and colon, and everything is indented, is to define a method called double underscore, 1, 2 underscores, init, and then double underscore. This is a standard. You have to start with this one. And there are various attributes associated with init. At the very least, you have to put one attribute that is called self. And self is the instantiation of the object. It's just how Python does this, all right? So you're always going to say self. And from now on, when you use the word self, you will be referring to the attribute. And I'll show you as we go through the example. After self, you're going to list the actual attributes that you will be passing to the class when you create or when you instantiate an object. All right? So in this case, the attributes, as I mentioned here in the documentation, when I covered documentation right above, the attributes are name, age, city, and state. All right? So internal to the class, you will have variable names or attributes that have, as I was saying, self, meaning the object, that are going to have dot notation. And you're going to call them, you can call them anything you want now, as long as they start with self and then dot. But it's common practice to call them dot, the name of the attribute, the same name that you passed. So in the first attribute happens to be name, okay. And I'm going to say self, that name is equal to name. So what it does is, when you instantiate your class, your object from this class, you will pass the name as a variable. That name is put in here, and then that value of the name is assigned to the variable, the internal to the object variable. I'm going to call it internal, okay? Self.name. And the same is true for the rest. But let me skip age and I'll come back to it. City will be self.city and state will be self.state. So from now on, when you use it internally here within the object, within your program, you will always be referring to those variables as self.xyz, all right? Self.city, self.state. All right, so let's go back to age, because I said there's something special about age. In the case of age, I'm using a double underscore before age. And I'm doing that because I want to encapsulate it. I want to treat it differently, and I'm going to hide it from a common practice that a user will use later, as I show you the example when we use it, to retrieve data. But you will be able to use a method to provide the age if you need to know the age or to update the age. You're just not going to be able to get the age the same way that you can get name, city, and state. You will have to specifically use a method to get the value of age. And as I describe the example, as we go through the example, you will see what I mean. So that's init. That's your first method, right? And if we go back, when I define the types of method, what kind of method is that? That's a constructor. Oops, let me run that again. That's a constructor method init, right? It's going to construct your object. All right. Then I have additional methods. Let me scroll down so you can see. The next method is introduce, and it passes to itself self, which is the information about the object. And the only thing that I'm going to do here in introduce, I'm going to return a string that says, hello, my name is self name, which is the value of name. It can be Joe or Peter or Alice or Mary or Jay, whatever name you give to the person. And then it's going to say, I live in self.city. So as you can see, when I use those attributes, I always refer to them as self.. They are dot notation. So I live in self.city, self.state. All right. So then I have another method, and this is add age. This is also an instance type of method. Both of them, introduce and add age, are instance type of methods. They are doing something about the object, something. All right. And the first one was to return a string, and the second one is to add a year to the age. Add age. The next method is get data. Now this is a specific type of method. Get underscore data is an accessor or a getter. When you call it, it's going to come back and retrieve data from your object. And you can provide whichever data you want to provide. In this case, I'm giving everything back. Name, age, city, and state. So I put the data in the form of a dictionary because I want to return it as a dictionary because it's nice. And I return that dictionary. All right. The next one is a get age. So this is a getter. Remember I said age is handled differently, and you'll see when I go through my examples when I use this class. So the first thing is I have get underscore age. So the user needs to know that there is a method that is called get underscore age that can run using that notation, as you will see. And that will return self that underscore age, which is the value of age. And just for completeness, I added another set of getters that are really not really necessary, although it's good practice in programming, because you can always get the city, state, and age in another way that I'm going to show you with that notation to get the attributes. So, but I created methods nevertheless. Set underscore city for to pass the city, and then oh no, sorry. I misspoke. These are setters. I'm letting you be able to change the city. Suppose the person moved, to change the state, and to change the age. All right. For some reason, my eyes were diverted to the get, and I didn't read properly that these are set. So I call them set. They are not returning anything. That's what gave it away. They're not returning anything. They're just setting the value of the attribute, changing it. So I'm passing new city, and I make new city to be equal to city. I'm passing new state, and I'm making new underscore state to be equal to self that state. So that is how I am setting it. This is a setter. And an age, say, say I forgot to update the date for 2 years. Now I have to change the date altogether and go, say, from 25 years of age to 28 years of age or something like that. So you can change the age. Or maybe you forgot to enter the age, or the age was wrong and there was an error in your data. So you can set city, state, and age. I didn't do one for person for the name because we want to keep that permanent. Okay, so I don't have a method to change this and set a different name for the person. So that is your first class. In summary, what we have is the name of the class with indentations, right? After that, name of the class, colon, the indentation, then many defs. These defs are just like when you defined and created new functions. In this case, we're going to call them methods. So you have various types of methods. The first one is a constructor method, init, with 2 underscores. The second method is introduce. The third one is add age, both of which are instance type of methods. The next method is get underscore data, which is a getter. Get underscore age is next, which is also a getter. It returns, see the return, that's key. Returns the data to you, returns the data to you. And the next one is three methods that are setters: set city, set state, and set age. You can call them whatever you want. I just call them this way because it's easy for me to follow. In the next video, right, we are going to do what we just created. We're going to instantiate an object and we're going to play with it. We're going to show you how the attributes work, how you're going to modify the attributes, and so forth. As you can see, this is coming, but I'm going to do another tape. So for now, thank you, and I'll talk to you in a few seconds.